Hi, my name's Eliza, and today we're going to be looking at ear training for absolute beginners. We're going to be learning how to begin recognizing our intervals by ear. So a quick note on who this lesson is for. If the word interval means literally nothing to you, great, we're going to talk about it. If you know a couple of your intervals, you know your thirds and fifths, but you're not really clear on like your sixths, sevenths, and seconds, great. This lesson is also for you. If you, maybe even if you know your intervals, but you've never approached ear training before, you're absolutely brand new to it, also great. So this is for anyone looking to just learn their musical intervals and how to begin recognizing them. Just quickly as well, before we dive in, if you are interested in one-to-one tuition over Skype, you can get in touch on my email or my Instagram. I'll link those in the description below, and I'd love to have you on board. So you can ask any questions that you need to in my Instagram DMs or on my email. So without further ado, let's learn our intervals. So what is an interval? An interval is a distance or a relationship between two notes. For example, that is an interval. Incidentally, this is also an interval, even though it's the same note. Interval basically describes the relationship between two consecutive single notes. All intervals. If I play this distance here and the same distance anywhere else, it's still going to be described as the same interval because it really doesn't matter which note we're beginning, which specific note we're beginning and ending on. It's about just the relationship, the distance between the two. So hopefully that's clear. Our diatonic scale, the diatonic scales that you're probably familiar with are just your basic major and minor scales. So we're kind of moving away from the pentatonic here because that's got a reduced number of intervals in it. Your diatonic scales are comprised of a set number of intervals, and each one of these has a different name and a different sound. So we're going to learn those. The first interval I'm going to talk about is that one I mentioned before, unison. There's really no sort of fast hack for recognizing unison by ear. It's just something that'll help if you work on exercises, recognizing if you're moving down, up, or staying the same on a note. That being said, don't sort of feel self-conscious if you're working on your ear training and you find, 5 minutes in, you're questioning yourself about whether something's unison or not. Our ears actually fatigue really quickly, especially when we're beginning ear training. It's something you build up, like anything else, you build up strength with it. So don't worry if that one's not always as easy as I'm kind of suggesting it should be. But you should be able to tell if you're musical that a note's repeating. So that's your unison. Next, we have our minor second. If we're learning all our intervals on one string here, which I'm going to try and keep it really, really simple and show you the intervals as they connect on one string, just to help us think about what the distances actually are. We can talk about beginning to move them all over the fretboard in a different video, if that's something you'd like to see. But our minor second is essentially a distance of one semitone or one fret up. You can recognize that by ear by thinking of the beginning of the Jaws theme tune. And, well, all of the Jaws theme tune. So on and so forth. So with every single one of these, when it comes to recognizing them by ear, I'm going to try and give you song references. It helps so much if you can reference it to something you know, rather than just going in sort of blind. So we're thinking Jaws for our minor second. No matter where I play that distance, if I'm moving up a fret, that's my minor second. If you want to help recognize that by ear descending, so going down the way, we want to think less sharks and more dinosaurs because it's in the main theme of Jurassic Park. You can move that anywhere, so this little bit, that's our minor second. Also, this is beginning to show you just briefly why knowing about intervals is really cool, because it means that if you need to shift the key of something, you can just move it anywhere you want, as long as you know the intervallic relationships in the melody. So that's pretty cool. But we're not talking about that yet. So Jurassic Park is our descending minor second, and Jaws is ascending. So next we have what we call a major second. That's a distance of 2 frets. So it's the next one up. You can recognize that by ear by thinking about Happy Birthday. And Descending Yesterday by the Beatles. Okay, so that's your major second. Now, already at this stage, there's 2 things to say. Firstly, you might be beginning to notice that our intervals work consecutively. We're just building up in semitones here. So it can help to count up to them if you can't really remember which sequence they go in, when we're talking about one string, of course. Secondly, if you want to begin practicing recognizing different intervals by ear already, feel free to pause this video here and take it in just very digestible chunks. You can just take this major and minor second idea and go away and practice that now. It's actually a really good idea to break these down into just a couple of intervals at a time and build up recognizing the difference between them. So if you want to just record yourself playing major seconds, minor seconds and unisons in whichever order and kind of mix it up a bit, then forget about it, come back to it and see if you can recognize them by ear. That's a good idea. You can get a friend to do it. That's probably a better idea because then somebody can tell you if you're right or not. There are also really good ear training apps out there. Perfect Ear, I highly recommend. So you can check that one out. Okay, now we're moving on to our thirds. Now, your thirds are really, really important intervals to begin to recognize by ear. Our major and our minor thirds are the difference between a major or a minor triad, right? So if we're talking about a major triad, we have a root, a major third, and a perfect fifth. If we're talking about a minor triad or a minor chord, in its basic form, then we have a root, a minor third, and a perfect fifth. So what changes is our third. It can be really helpful to start recognizing changes in thirds by ear. That's going to help you with recognizing the tonality of chords and figuring out more complex things by ear. So this is why we begin with intervals, and then other ear training kind of follows naturally from this. So our first third that we have to talk about is our minor third. 3 semitones up or 3 frets up follows on from our major second. So that's our minor third. Some song references for our minor third. This is favored in a lot of rock riffs. So our good old Guitar Center classic friend, Smoke on the Water, begins with a minor third. Anyway, it's a great riff, and that's a hill I'm willing to die on. So a Whole Lot of Love as well. I mean, don't play the Whole Lot of Love riff like that. People will be sad, but that's the interval that's being played. It's just not being played there. Descending minor thirds you can recognize with the beginning of the vocal melody in Hey Jude. That Hey Jude hook. So that's your minor third. Next we have, you guessed it, our major third, which is another semitone up from there. Major third. That's what makes a major chord a major chord. So a couple of ear training reference points for that, for your major third. Ascending, you can think of When the Saints Come Marching In. The O When is a major third. That begins with a major third. Descending, there aren't, I couldn't find a ton of very, very relatable or recognizable references for this. So, by the way, if you have any better suggestions for intervallic relationship songs, Drop them in the comments because I'd love to know. So Swing Low, Sweet Chariot by, I mean, it's a spiritual, right, originally, so whichever version you want to think of. I think because of UB40, a lot of people know that song, or if you're a rugby fan. The Swing Low, that is a major third descending. So that's a couple of ways to recognize your major third. Now we move on to our fourths. Here's where we break out of this major minor pattern. We've got a perfect fourth. Here's where I typically start moving on to my next string to play that. Incidentally, if we're on our E and A strings here, adjacent frets, so I'm on what, fret 5 right now? 5 and 5 on E and A string, that's going to be a perfect fourth. Ascending, you can recognize that with the Harry Potter theme, which I mentioned in my last video. Wouldn't be a good Scot if I didn't tell you that Auld Lang Syne also, the Should Auld, is a perfect fourth. Descending with our perfect fourth, we have the little riff from Under Pressure by Queen. Can't quite remember if that's the rhythm of that. It's been a while since I heard that song. Next, we have every metalhead's favourite interval, the augmented fourth, also known as the tritone, also known as the devil's interval. This one is just you take your fourth, raise it, another semitone. This supposedly has the most dissonant sound of any interval, which is why it gets its reputation. You can recognize a tritone from the Simpsons theme. The Simp before Sons is your augmented fourth. It's also Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix, so that's another good reference point for that. Talking about descending tritones, we want to think YYZ by Rush. So on. Our next interval is another perfect interval, and we're talking about a perfect fifth. Again, this one's just a semitone up from your tritone. As with all these intervals, they're just a semitone, or if we're talking about one string, a fret above whatever our last interval was, okay? So again, I'm gonna start sort of going on to my A string here. Star Wars, obviously. Descending perfect fifths. I know sea shanties are very in right now. What Should We Do with a Drunken Sailor has a descending perfect fifth in it. And so on. Moving on, we only have a perfect fifth, and then we start moving into sixths. So whilst we had a perfect and augmented fourth, the fifth is just either perfect or not there at all for these purposes. Anyway, so we've got our minor sixth. The way to recognize that both ascending and descending is The Entertainer by Scott Joplin. It's got that little, back and forth in it. That is a distance of a minor sixth. Next, we have our major sixth. So we're back to our major and minor pattern. Our major sixth. For recognizing your major sixth by ear, you might want to think of My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. And so on. For your descending major sixth, you can think of Nobody Knows the Troubles I've Seen. Nobody in that, I believe, is a descending major sixth. Next, we move on to our major and minor sevenths. These are another kind of interval type that it's good to begin recognizing, begin thinking about early, because they're going to come up in chords for you a lot quicker than like seconds and sixths and things like that will. So we have, since we're back to this major minor pattern, minor sevenths and major sevenths. First, we have our minor seven. If you want to recognize your minor seventh ascending, you can think of The Winner Takes It All by ABBA. in the winner. I couldn't find anything hugely common and recognizable for a descending minor seventh, so let me know if you have a better suggestion. But Lady Jane by the Rolling Stones, the chorus of that features one, if you want to go and have a listen. Almost at the end here, we've got our major seventh. That interval features in Take On Me by a-ha. And finally, we come back to our octave. Our octave is the same, whatever the same note we started on. So say I've got my A here. It's the next A up would be our octave, right? You know, if I'm on my E here at my 12th fret, that's an octave. You can recognize octaves in Immigrant Song. Again, don't play that riff like that. That would suck, but you get the idea. So that takes us to the end of our interval learning. Those are all the intervals that you need to know. It's a lot to digest, so what I'd suggest doing is pausing this video wherever you like. You can go back and, you know, rewatch through it and pause it. Maybe like scribble down some notes. If you find songs that work better for you for identifying them, think of whatever's the best reference point for you. But you can begin practicing them by just playing them to yourself, thinking about the differences, hearing the differences. Try to remember all the interval names, the distance that they describe, and the sequence that they go in. You can check out some of those ear training apps. I think I just mentioned Perfect Ear because honestly, that's the one I use. I just recommend it. There are also cheat sheets online and things like that. So start learning your intervals and you're going to see a huge improvement in your ability to recognize what somebody's playing by ear. And also it's like the basis of so much music theory knowledge further down the line. If you want to begin getting into more complex concepts, a lot of them are going to be using intervals, the terminology of intervals, to describe more complex concepts. So learn your intervals. I promise you won't regret it. If there's anything you'd like to see a lesson on next, let me know. So yeah, leave a like and please do subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.